Good. So my name is Sissel Hansen, and I'm one of the founders of Impact the Future, which is another conference that's going to take place in Sonderborg, focusing on not only climate but the all 17 global goals and sustainability as a whole. And it's a 10-year long project we have started 2020 in the Corona years. So it was a bit difficult up till 2030, where we want to facilitate the conversation between a little bit also what we're going to be discussing here, like businesses, governments, the academic system, but also the civil society, the consumers, the people who actually also has to be on this transformation for it to truly work. So I'm going to be moderating this session, and besides also having this side jobs as moderating, my main job is that I founded a media and publishing company called Startup Guide that have created guidebooks for entrepreneurs in more than 50 different countries. So I have a little bit of an idea about innovation and where it's moving in business, and I'm very excited for exactly this session, where we're going to be discussing how innovation and innovation initiatives can really move the climate transformation, and hear it from many different angles, which I think is very important at this presentation. Peter said it a little bit in the beginning as well, and I definitely think that this is no one-man job. It has to be cross sectors, and that's why it's super important that we figuring out what is the new business models, what is the new partnership models, and also how can we implement what is already going on out there. There is the technology, there is the innovation, as you will see from some of the speakers today, but the implementation seems to be the hard part. So how do we do it? This was a little bit about where we're coming from. I quickly want to introduce the four amazing speakers that we have with us today, and the structure of this session is going to be that they are all going to give a small introduction to each one of their projects and companies that they are standing behind, and actually give a small presentation on that as well. And then when that's over, we're going to go into a Q&A together and discuss how the different elements of how to move forward, and the challenges that definitely is upon this journey. And then also I would very much like these kind of panels can be very boring for 1.5 hours if you are not participating. So very much appreciate if the audience really see this as we're a small group, so see this as a conversation between all of us. In the end, ask questions in the chat, and I will try to ensure that we can really have as many angles covered in this discussion as possible. So again, thank you for being here with us on this Wednesday morning, and thank you so much for having me. So I think we'll start from the top of my sheet, which is Kjeld Stærk, a good friend as well, Kjeld, from Sonderborg. Will you take it away from here?
Thank you very much, Sissel. My name is Kjeld Stærk, and I'm chairman for ProjectZero Business, and I'm also working for Danfoss. You should see my presentation in just a little bit. We just need to put in presentation mode, then we're all set to go. Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this session here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost-effective way to carbon neutrality in 2029 for our city here in Sonderborg. Our vision. That is, you can see that on the chart, and I think that's quite important for us because it is a shared vision, and for this to work, we need all citizens, all businesses, the municipality, everybody to buy into the vision. And it has to be social, unacceptable to stand outside. And the outset is, of course, the Paris Agreement. And our belief is that we can build that primarily based on energy efficiency, which is a main contributor. And this is what we want to show to the world here in Sonderborg, that if we take the best-in-class technology available, then you can create a CO2 neutral city already in 2029. So the question is not about innovation. The question is about implementation of what's out there. What we are about to do is creating an integrated energy system for our municipality. And in a way, that goes right back to our vision and the shared vision, because you can make that integrated system so big that nobody is really having a strong buy-in to the vision. And you can make the integrated energy system so small that it does not have sufficient scale. We feel, and that can be by coincidence, for us, the size of the municipality works well for integrated system. And this is what we are working on. We have, our backbone is a strong district heating network. We have integrated all sectors. We have transport, we have industry, we have supply, we have buildings. We're working with all technologies, digitalization, balancing, and this is really what I want to elaborate a little bit on in this presentation here, how we all put it together. But the outset, that is that we want to create an integrated energy system for the Sonderborg, and the size of Sonderborg is about 75,000 people. And it can easily be that in other places of the world, an integrated energy system is a lot bigger or a lot smaller. But I think it's about scale matters here, of course, but also this shared vision. And I've tried to put that into a picture here of what really matters. And what the shared task, you can see that in the middle of the triangle. That is the integrated energy system. We have a shared vision. I've talked about that. The other part is the climate action planning, and I think you went through that in detail yesterday. For us, it means that we have, and we are about to conclude on that, we have created a robust master plan for how we are coming from where we are today until 2029. And that is, we have made a specific calculation within all sectors, in buildings, in industry, in transport, in energy supply, on how we can close the gap in CO2, but equally important, the energy consumption and also the cost. Our ambition, that is that you can come to Sonderborg and then we can display the technologies for how to get to carbon neutrality. So for us, it's very important that the business case is behind it. You can make a system that is based on public funding, but if you really want to turn that into business, then it's hard for the people that comes and see it, for them to go home and implement it themselves, because they may not have access to public funding. It's much more fun to show the business case behind it, because then they can. Then it's interesting for them to make a replicate when they come home and make the same business. So that's important for us. And of course, it's also important for us when we make that master plan that we are tracking it every quarter in each of the working groups. So we don't find ourselves in a situation in 2028 that, oh, by the way, we did not make it. We will make it. So we will track. And if someone falls behind, well, that's normal project execution. If someone falls behind, then of course they need to see if they can make a corrective action so they can come back on track. If not, someone else has to take over to close the gap. So where we are now in that process is we have made the master plan, or we're about to conclude on the master plan. The next step is the specific action plan in each working group, and this is all based on, and then there we come to the third corner, the application, the technology behind it. We call it the demonstratorium, that is based on energy efficiency, sector coupling, balancing, and so forth. And I want to go through quickly some of them in this presentation, so you can see what are the main elements in our master plan and how it all connects and how it builds up to the vision. But as you also can see, there are many stakeholders in this, and we all need them to buy in. That's why this vision part is so important, and I put very much focus on that. But it's also the approach. First priority for us is really not to use energy that are not needed. That is energy efficiency. The second priority, that is that we get the most out of the energy already produced. That is the sector coupling part. And then energy has to be made green. I'd like to take you through some of them so you get a feel for what we're about to do. First, we have we'll visit the biogas plant. Here we are working on extracting the heat from the process. One thing is that it produces biogas, but we're also extracting the heat. We have got two nearby district heating companies to join forces. They are privately or owned by the users, but they have all voted for that they want to join forces and take the district heating from the process. We also looking at taking the heat out of the manure, so we can use that for our district heating network. This all you can put into a much more integrated system, and that is way too complex to get into the presentation here. I just want to show that it can all be integrated. And one of the element is a new water treatment plant that we're about to make. And here we have focused also to take the making heat recovery. And the target here is that it can cover 20-25% of the heat consumption in the city. So that's very much that will be very much integrated with the bioplant. Also, the waste from the water treatment plant will go into the bioplant. We have also a big brick manufacturing business in Sonderborg, in nearby Sonderborg, the city of Sonderborg. Brick manufacturing has been a very black industry. It has almost been an industry about to lose in the country. They have taken the spoon. The apartments in how we have renovated many of the apartments in the city. We have a new intelligent sensor that is able to control the temperature centrally, and here we can increase the temperature from 4 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock, so we don't spend time on or spend energy on heating while people are in the buildings are taking their shower. And when they have left the building, then we turn the heat on the building. You don't feel it in the building, but it knocks off the peak load. And it's generally, we have got a saving around 7% with having this intelligent device in the building. We have also created a new area with 140 buildings in the part of the city. Here we are putting in low temperature district heating. Low temperature district heating has 25% less heat consumption. Plus, it opens up for more heat sources which have a higher energy efficiency when you use heat pump. So actually, you are saving a lot of energy there. The next example is one our good fellows in the city who have developed a new brick for building houses based on waste glass. And the beauty of this is he is just having one brick, and it has so much insulation. So that is sufficient to give adequate insulation for the building. We have also the company I'm working for, Danfoss, takes its own medicine besides supplying a lot of the technology here. We have in the last 10 years, actually not 10, it's 14 years, reduced the energy consumption with 68%. And that serves as a model for the other industries in the municipality. So we are working on open books here. We are aiming at becoming CO2 neutral in 2022. Working very much on electrification of heavy-duty vehicles. One example is a ferry boat from the island that we are, the main island in Sonderborg, to a neighbor island. We have put in the first high-powered CO2 neutral electrical ferry boat there.
I truly believe that what we're doing here holds the answers to some of the greatest challenges in our time. We are, in essence, creating a power shift. When sustainable energy was first harnessed, it was a great breakthrough. But a major problem was left unsolved. We couldn't store the energy that was produced. So when the forces of nature created more power than we needed at a particular moment, we had no choice but to let it go unused. What a waste. Until recently, we had learned to live with that waste, but not anymore. At Green Lab, we take the power from the wind and the sun and turn it into electrofuels, heat, and other green products. This power shift enables us to store green energy. Some of it is used for shipping or heavy transport, which today rely on fossil fuels. But we also use the energy to provide power, heat, and fuel to the green factories located in our business park. Here, businesses share their excess resources with each other, like heat or biomass. We call that symbiosis net, and it's quite unique. It means we enable green, sustainable, CO2-friendly production of pretty much anything. Now imagine that we duplicate and export that concept with everything it includes, from the technology know-how to the cloud solution that keeps everything running. We see it as both a solution and a business opportunity. Imagine transportation and shipping entirely powered by green energy. Imagine local communities suddenly able to power industrial business parks with sun and wind. Imagine a world finally independent of fossil fuels. Let's create a power shift.
Yeah. The idea of this is that we can show how to do things, make the areas that will show up as a front runner, and then help the government and other sites like Sonderborg to use these technology and use these integrations for the future. So it's an open innovation platform, public-private partnership, non-profit, but very much commercially focused. And we're trying to gain scale very quickly. Our best role is as a technology enabler or an accelerator. We have several examples of projects which have gone from patent to factory within 2.5 or 3 years. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple of those. And likewise, because of our test zone, we are also a national research facility. We work with all of the Danish universities, and we're supported by the Willem Fund for mission-driven research. And this helps the acceleration, of course. How do we work? As I mentioned, open innovation, but in order to get this to work, you need to put new companies together in new ways and provide new business models for them, as well as developing a physical platform. So our job is to make everyone else's job easier. We do all the in-between work. We call it facility as a service. So a lot of the infrastructure, all of the conversion of energy, all of the storage facilities, logistics are invested in by GreenLab, which means if you have a new factory or a new P2X module, you just drop it into the platform and you make it work. So everyone gets to focus on their core competencies. We grow out of Skive Kommune, and Skive has this energy city project for the last 10 years. And many concepts have come out. They have zero energy buildings in Skive. They're doing a city renewal and zero carbon. They're running a CNG and hydrogen cars as a public, and the public procurement is very much CO2 neutral. But they've also invested now 25 million in launching this Green Lab Skive AS, which I'm the director of, together with Norlys and Spar Vestfund, which is a local fund. So our capital is at 75 million, and we use this to invest in the infrastructure and the park itself, which makes the facilities as a service work. We have some public funds over the last 6 years from mid-region and from the business development centers, but primarily it's funded by this public-private partnership. And together we have about 100 million we can invest in our infrastructure. But already today we have 1.5 billion of private investment on the site. And we already have a pipeline reaching 3 billion, Danish kroner. So we're just seeing the effects of some investment with a 20 to 30 times return on that investment in private growth. So our whole proposal is generating growth for society. This is how it looks on a 3D picture, the site today. We have a waste handling facility just next to that. Quantafuels was just a couple of patents up in Norway just 3 years ago. Today it's running 60 tons a day in turning waste plastic into naphtha, which is driven down to Germany, to BASF, to make new plastic. So it's a new circular plastic industry, which has just come out of the last 3 years of development. The biogas plant is relatively large, just like the one in southern Jutland, about 25 million cubic meters. And this is a great supply source for biogenic CO2, which, as you can see, just above the biogas plant, we have the P2X area. So the first project for P2X is supported by the Danish Energy Agency. It's a 12 megawatt project, and it's using the biogenic CO2 next to it to combine the green hydrogen and the CO2 into methanol. And when you hear about the methanol contracts from Circle K and from Maersk, this is where they're being produced. So we're the first commercial contracts for the offtake of green methanol. And happily, Maersk has taken a strategic choice and bought 8 ships, which will run on green methanol, which gives us a basis for a tremendous scale-up. So on the other side, where it says available lot, we actually have a grant from the EU to do 100 megawatts more of green hydrogen production from our own wind and solar park and other connections, which will be using energy nets access to gain access to new power sources for green energy. Now, I would say that the only thing in the way right now is access to green energy. We just need more of it, and we need better access to that. And we're working directly with the Danish agency and Energy Net, the national transmission company, on how to readjust our grid, how to readjust our laws and our regulations so that everyone can gain more access to green energy. You'll also note on the left an innovation building. Everyone has an innovation building, of course, so that's kind of a requirement. But in fact, this will be built based on the large amount of research and funding we have for the research. So it'll be primarily research and development, but also training of specialists. Because if you think about an offshore wind specialist who's working today for ABB or Siemens or Vestas, they know nothing about water, explosive gases, or how to put this all together into a P2X system. So we'll be training about 2,000 experts a year in how to do P2X combined with wind and solar. I mentioned facilities as a service. So what is that? Our symbiosis net, as we call it, is an electrical net. It's a heating exchange, so we can cool and then exchange and redeliver heat from different sources and uses. And it also takes care of all the gases, which include hydrogen and natural gas, of course, or methane from biogas. But it also includes that we're building out a CO2 network, so we can capture more biogenic CO2 and convert it to methanol. The idea of the site is not to customize for the particular site. It is to create green growth and to create an agile platform. So we want to create a platform which everyone can use and apply, including the digital optimization systems, the SCADA systems, how to do the infrastructure and how to do the business models. Because the idea here is to replicate locally and globally. And we have today talked with just about every harbor, municipality, and power plant in Denmark about how to replicate this around all of Denmark. This is our P2X plan so far. So by 2024, we're at 124 megawatts. And these are signed grants and agreements. And our proposal to the government is that we send a bid out for 100 megawatts a year to ensure we have the best global technology on site and to be able to benchmark technologies against each other. This gives everyone a lot of data about how to do this in the future. It's very complicated to put this together. It's systemic innovation. But we found that if you just do one niche like hydrogen or just some methanol or just a biogas plant, you lose the whole circular economy. So we need to do it all at once, unfortunately. But we try to make sure that we tackle the complexity as our job and make it easy for all of the other partners. In order to guide us in that, we always look at what's the positive community effect. And that's not social impact investment or CSR. It has to do with us looking at the resources and businesses in the region. How can they contribute? How can they grow? How can we make them greener, reduce CO2, and provide new industry moving in? So we can see from our private investment, I was just negotiating yesterday with a 70,000 square meter factory which will produce circular fiberboards from paper and cardboard. They're from England. So they're looking for a site where they can be a greener process with this new circular fiberboard. And we can provide a context for that and gives a tremendous effect for the local society. But it also gives a lot of heat, which we can reuse in other industries, such as extracting protein from starfish or from grasses, where they need a lot of heat to do the drying process. So all of this is happening on the digital and physical platform, and it provides competitive advantage and mutual incentives. So participating in this collective system, which in Denmark we have a cooperative system where we have a great history of, we're basically just modernizing the cooperative model and giving people incentives to join and create interdependencies. And that's probably the biggest challenge of all, is people making interdependencies with each other. Whereas in the business school, you learn to optimize for yourself and increase your profits by outcompeting everyone. Here we show that through competitive advantage and mutual incentives, you can actually get to green industry, but you have to do it as an interdependent way. And that's probably the basic challenge we have. The time plan is to do pretty much everything I'm talking about by the end of next year. That's when the windmills and solar and our transformer and network will be connected. We partnered up with the regional district supply company. So they're doing the network on our behalf, and we just pay the bills, basically. And then we connect the heating and the water and the gas systems all together. We're already working globally, 4 sites, in particular up in Norway with Interreg project, where they're helping us to replicate a green lab up in Norway. We have pre-development projects with Cape Town, Gabon, and Mexico through the World Bank and the EU. So the whole idea is to get everyone activated, take the bumps as the front runner, but then help everyone else to learn how to do this. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for having 10 minutes to explain what's going on. I hope we have a good discussion.
Thank you so much, Christopher. It's super interesting to see what's happening in Skive, just kilometers away from Sonderborg, that there is really so much going on in this little country. The next speaker we have, I will definitely not pronounce the name correct, either of the company or the speaker himself. So maybe Shamil, maybe you can do that yourself. I'm sorry, I'm just learning Portuguese. It's hard enough, and it's very different from Spanish, I learned. So
yes. So can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Jaime. So yeah, it's not really easy for anyone outside of Spain to pronounce correctly. And well, first of all, thank you all for having us here. Really honored to be included in such an impressive panel. I'm from Hobeen. We're a small startup based in Spain, and we're basically the first app in Spain that faces the waste of resources at a household level by integrating everyday smart home devices to give personalized energy advice and sustainability tips to consumers. We basically realized that the households, at least in Spain, are not really being catered services or ideas to help them improve their carbon footprint and their energy use. And that's how Hobeen started. So basically, we realized that the households were not making an efficient use of energy resources, mainly because there was a lack of eco-education, which led to lack of consciousness about the issue we're facing, and a lack of motivation, which led to over expenditure, over pollution, and bad habits at a household level. And basically, we came up with a solution to help households track the main sources of energy and CO2 emissions. And it's basically electricity, gas, and water. And we do that by integrating already existing smart home devices, which we thought was the most efficient way of bringing to reality our solution. And we basically help households reduce their CO2 footprint and save energy, which translates into big savings per household in terms of money, water, and CO2 consumption. Basically, the two pillars of our tool is education, and we do that through gamification, because we realize it's the most efficient way of strengthening new conductual habits and having fun in actually learning. And technology, which, as I explained, was integrating smart home devices to take efficiency and control to the next level. We have a freemium app in which we give recommendations to households. We create challenges and scores so consumers can compare to friends. We launch new competitions regularly, and we create a community and education. And yeah, as I mentioned, gamification it's one of the keys for us, since it helps us increase interaction with the app. It improves the user experience. It guides users to achieve goals and improvements, and it's key in differentiating, and it basically, all in all, increases app usage by 47%. So a few ways in which we help all the consumers. As I mentioned, there was a free and a premium version of our website. So we have this energy stoplight, which basically tells consumer when is the best moment to use their home devices since there's a new tarification system in Spain about electricity, there's 3 periods. So with this tool, we help them decide whether it is the best moment or not. We help consumers track their consumption history, and we break it down by device. And based on their usage, we generate recommendations for a more efficient use. And finally, we are creating a community that helps them create a sense of belonging, and in which we share how much everyone has improved or has contributed through the use of our app. Here, just a few snapshots of how our app looks like in terms of the tracking system, community, and statistics, and some of the challenges in which we try to educate and let consumers know how to improve. Because one of the key things we found was that there was not a structured science-based source of eco education, and we're trying to fill that gap with this section of our app, and mainly in a easy and consumer friendly way. So yeah, that was pretty much a snapshot of what we're doing, and happy to get your questions and comments on the Q&A sessions. So I'll give it back to you, Sissel.
Thank you so much, Mia. That was very interesting, and also very interesting to see from a totally different angle, from the B2C angle, how you can basically nudge people into also be part of this. Looking forward to discuss that more in the panel afterwards. The last speaker we have that's going to present before we go into the discussion is Marek from SKYCORP in Estonia.
Perfect, thank you. Right, so I'm going to touch on something that Green Labs also had on their first picture, a nice little drone shot, but go a bit deeper on this and see what else they can do in this climate transition, and hopefully the steps to also take to start it up. So, starting with our own company, a bit of an introduction there. We started 2017 and quickly picked up 2 crazy things to combine. So we took hydrogen and drones and put them together to help with longer flight times, and thus make them a bit more useful as well in some instances. We've been strongly introduced to both of those ecosystems thanks to that. So working on multiple international drone organizations, hydrogen-related associations such as the Estonian Hydrogen Association, and also the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, sitting there on the mobility roundtable, actually with the likes of Airbus, which is quite a nice sort of balance, I think. And we do everything basically that helps us with our mission of creating a carbon neutral, fully holistic ecosystem. And of course, I think the reasons for doing all of that are quite clear to everybody. We have to become carbon neutral by 2050. I think it's been said so many times, there's no point in repeating all of that. And of course, since there's no silver bullet to doing all of this, then we have to use every tool at our disposal. And there's a lot of initiatives in the European level and also national levels that support it. And of course, both manned and unmanned aviation should play an integral part in this. So why are we talking about drones in all of this? As a simple answer, like look out the window right now, you probably see many cars if your window is facing the streetway, but you don't see anything in the air. So the question becomes, can we exploit that free space there, and perhaps put some of those cars in there instead, because drones by nature are fully electric, so they don't add to the emission, which is great. So, and if we can take the dull, dirty, and dangerous tasks in particular off the people and put it autonomous instead, then it saves also on costs, improves the operation speed, the coverage is improved, and it of course leaves time for people to deal with more innovative and creative tasks instead of the mundane that can be automated. And COVID actually helped us in principle by proving a lot of these assumptions, because it's also contactless by design, for example. You can work from home. it showed many useful examples in addition to that, for example, vaccine deliveries or improving public safety. And here's a fun shot from Tartu, taken during the first lockdown. Very good data because there weren't too many people around, so it sort of helped with actually some data collection tasks already to prepare. But let's talk about the applications then. In Tartu, we started vertical city workshops, exploring the different use cases and opportunities, and especially targeting those use cases that could directly benefit the city, especially those that involve, in addition to the standard survey, inspection, delivery, public safety tasks, also environmental implications. Because cities have to start also dealing now with climate mitigation. Unfortunately, as IPCC's last report showed, we've kind of passed our ideal timeline. So what we're seeing in Europe is also the increased floods, forest fires, stronger storms happening more frequently. And unfortunately, even sort of incident response, disaster response that usually happened outside of Europe, we sort of have to be prepared for it inside of Europe as well now. So this is something that can be helped with. And one very relevant use case, for example, also is the production of renewable energy source or renewable energy. And there's a lot of people said we need more renewable energy. So in cities, a lot of solar panels, for example, are on rooftops, which are not too easy to access. And also on larger solar panel fields now, there's a lot to cover. So we could be using aerial monitoring to actually monitor the performance of those solar panels and help, for example, change them out if they're underperforming, especially if that's during the warranty period. So, for example, for 50 megawatts of PV installation, if we cover that with drones and help improve either the maintenance cycles or the replacement of those panels, it can lead to powering 1,500 more homes per year. So additional example there, for example, is also public package collection points. Of course, the containers have sensors on them, but the outside area of containers doesn't. So instead of sending some person there to scout it, and he probably has to use a car to get around, again, we can do it aerially, do it fast, pre-program the routes, and that helps to sort of determine also the route for cleaning it up, and thus also improving some environmental matters that seem small at first, but they all add up. And since, of course, everything has to be economically and non-economically viable as well, then there's a lot of questions to ask in setting all of that up, and I won't be running through all of them, but a lot has to be still set up, of course, in determining those main use cases. And that's one important part in talking directly with the city and communicating with all the stakeholders. And of course, talking about the stakeholders, then that's what the cities have to start with. Get everybody behind the table, talk with them, even those that don't seem to be maybe related directly. They are always in one way or the other. It's very cross-industry. Basically, you need to find a champion, of course, and you also need to definitely improve city planning, because in the future, what we're talking about also is air taxis, for example, short range electric flying. Instead of having to take a taxi or something, you can jump in, again, saving on the congestion and helping with the sort of carbon neutrality targets in the same time. But this needs to be planned for already now. And to do that, of course, you need to find some 5 to 10 top use cases to already start analyzing, again, from both safe standpoints. And to be able to do that, you need to assess the ground risk, the air risk, find the ideal routes, start with public awareness, talk why these things are up there in the air. That's incredibly vital. The ecosystem has to be established, of course. You need to establish also a roadmap, ideally even leading to a strategy. And ideally what we'd like to see is the entire airspace segment, that the very low airspace that cities own, that should be also included in the future energy, climate and environment plans, because they can definitely contribute there. But you need to find out exactly how, what are the best use cases to aim for. And 2030, while it seems far away, it's actually quite close. So everything has to start already today. And once again, this cross-industry cooperation is a must there. So here's an example of what we did in Tartu. Essentially, we set up a blueprint which we call the Zero Est, which is a climate neutral air mobility hub. So establishing all the stakeholders, creating that ecosystem, determining the initial support measures that have to be set up, and again, both manned and unmanned aviation play a role there. And with manned aviation, we mean also very regional, not only this international flying, but also very short-haul regional, because that can be converted, and it will be converted first to hydrogen and electric. So both battery planes and hydrogen planes will have their place in the future ecosystem, but this is going to start from the short-haul segment. So the entire ecosystem has to be set up, and those stakeholders that can support all of this have to be found and also introduced to this action plan. Talking of that positive impact, what we determined is that they definitely can contribute to those climate neutrality targets, removing traffic from the streets, putting it in the air and having it electric, reducing the amount of workload that they have to do. Of course, it helps with the development of the fully electric and hydrogen infrastructure as well. That has to be set up already today, also in airports, even if the planes are a bit further away. This also helps take part in further EU projects. And of course, you can essentially generate a new multi-billion-euro industry. So not a bad outcome from starting from small little drones in there and seeing what else you can do with that and determining those use cases. And it's, of course, helping also the regulators and EU standards because somebody has to do the first uptake, again, create that blueprint, such as we heard before, as well as other companies are doing in their respective fields. And that's how we do it, working together. So I think I was also pretty much on time. Thank you for that. I'm really looking forward to the discussions to follow.
Thank you so much, Marek. It's so interesting to see like so different opportunities that there is as well. So thank you very much for that. We'll have like a half an hour now to discuss. And again, just if anyone have some questions in the audience, please just write them. So the sooner the better. I can see that Peter already raised his hand. So maybe Peter, if you want to say something before we start. You are on mute. You are still on mute. No, unfortunately, we cannot hear you.
And now?
Yes,
okay.
Perfect.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's just echo. No? Otherwise, Peter, you can write it and I can be your microphone if it is. Good. All right. Christopher has to leave in not so short, so I would actually just start out with like dedicating first question to you. Christopher, like thank you so much for the presentation. It was really interesting to see, and you know, like it almost seems like like many of these like a no-brainer of like, you know, how we can just scale this green lab model to cities all around the world and not only Denmark. But can you maybe tell us a little bit about what is actually the challenges scaling a concept like this, you know, moving forward? Because I guess that's the goal of yours, right?
Yes, and the challenge is twofold. One is relearning the business approach. I have an MBA myself, and I recall, you know, being taught to just optimize my own business, compete everyone else out of business, and you know, go for a monopoly in the end. So that's this optimization learning we have in business is really a stumbling block for recreating the ecosystem. Because the only way to get to CO2 neutrality and the only way to get to CO2 actually growth, from green growth and CO2 neutrality, is to create new interdependencies. And if you look today at how biogas plants are run or how PTX is being promoted, they're looking at niche solutions. And we need to use every energy stream to create a value stream. So we discuss, for example, in P2X, and I'm in every P2X advisory in Denmark. I'm even in the CEO Council of Hydrogen for the EU. And everyone's just talking hydrogen. And our point is, well, what's the value of the hydrogen? What will it be applied to create a green transition? You're just going to pipe it into Germany so they can use it in industries or petrochemical greenwashing? Or are we actually going to create green growth and remake our industries based on green energy? The only way you can do that is at scale, and the scale comes from cooperation. I had this discussion yesterday. So we have one factory who needs 35 megawatts of high temperature heat for the process. That's not enough yet, even though it's huge. I would need 3 or 4 of those factories before my thermal storage from wind and solar could make economic sense. On the other hand, once I get to 100 megawatts of high temperature green heat usage in green industry, I can start to make sense of the cost benefit of doing thermal storage, using stones or molten salt or something like that, based on surplus energy when it's too much wind and solar combined. So this is really the challenge, is relearning the business approach and getting people to work together. People in business hate dependencies. It turns up on a risk table. So trying to de-risk means trying to create an optimal self-contained solution in our current approach. And just the last point is, of course, we need to adjust our regulations so we can create these clusters more quickly. And in fact, I'm invited tomorrow to the Danish Energy Agency and the department in the ministry to talk about which laws and regulations we need to write in order to replicate this across all of Denmark and become a global frontrunner. And we have to mind that it's a global competition we're building up here. But our approach is, well, let's promote this solution everywhere. Let everybody learn how to do this. And we provide then the technology from Danfoss, from Vestas, from Haldertopser in the solution, so we can gain export at the same time that we're promoting a solution which everyone can use.
Thank you so much. Just before you leave, there was the question from Peter, the one that he couldn't say, which basically is around that all of these 4 projects are actually based on that green cities is their playground. But how are they progressing with scaling from sales and profits point of view? Can you just a few minutes on that before you leave, and then I'll make
Thank
sure.
you. Well, actually, it's very interesting because we're actually creating new industries. And during the 70s and the 80s, we exported a lot of industries which were polluting to other countries. That didn't help the global climate, but it helped Denmark's CO2 footprint. Mm-hmm. And today we can see that we can redo industry on a green fashion and then bring them back to Denmark. So if you look at the North Sea project with 40, 50 gigawatts of wind energy, and you bring that into land, our own national energy company, EnergyNet, says, well, use that on site, do the conversion, do the application on site, rather than just shipping it all through pipes to Germany. And that way we can invite new industry back. So our own effects today are already 60 full-time jobs in just the 2 years we've been running. So we're a startup ourselves. We have 3 new circular industries established which didn't exist before. So circular plastics, proteins from marine waste, and green grass, which is replacing the soya imports from South America and China. And of course, we have our fiber boards and our pyrolysis processes. And it turns out if you're putting pyrolysis right next to P2X, there's a huge synergy effect with the green hydrogen used to create, for example, fuels for jets from agricultural waste. We can provide cheaper green hydrogen to pyrolysis, then they can order it black hydrogen from Rioja, which is just 100 kilometers away. So we already see economic positive effects in industry, making more money by co-locating and using green sources. And the whole approach is just look at value streams rather than products. Don't look at hydrogen. Look at the green growth opportunity from hydrogen. Look at how to use the waste heat from their electrolysis. Look at the industries which, with you co-locate, can have shared logistics, shared energy streams, and create better profits for the green industries. And they'll move in. We're looking at a 500 million krona investment right now in circular fiber boards from paper and cardboard waste. They're moving from England to Denmark to Skive because of this circular economy platform, because it's cheaper and more profitable to do it in that cluster. So it can create green growth, and it can create a better business by co-locating correctly.
Thank you so much, Christopher, and thank you for joining us here. It was a pleasure to meet you and hear about what you're doing in Skive. I'll move over to you, Kjeld, now talking about business, and also I want to put on something that you said in your presentation, that this model that ProjectZero have created is also very publicly funded as well, and I guess you are standing behind us the business side of ProjectZero, and this transformation of business really taking over, and goes also together with what Peter writes, how is the forecast for the business perspective in ProjectZero, and how to also scale that model out to the cities and countries in the world where there is not public funding to create a ProjectZero.
We don't have a model for how cities can replicate ProjectZero, because that's not what we are here for. We are open to show what we have done. And one thing I did not mention before, but you saw the Danfoss factory that have reduced heat consumption with 68% since 2007. It's all done with a payback time less than 3 years. So there is an enormous business potential, low-hanging fruit, fast money return if you go that path, and that is what we would like to show and for the world, and then hopefully they can find a model, their own model for how to make their own integrated system. Of course, if you are in the south, you're less heat dependent as we are in the north, so it will be a different composition. But hopefully what we have been doing here can be inspiration for their thinking, and at least we can provide the technology that will make them come through. So it is a little bit, I think the way our model can be exported, it is a little bit by seeing is believing. It is coming to the place, see how, and maybe a mayor, he will not be interested in everything, but he could be interested in wastewater treatment, or how to upgrade apartment buildings, or what do I know, that, and then we can demonstrate an example on that. And then he can bring that home, because it's real. It's not on a PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. And then he can do it himself.
In terms of what I think that you guys have been really good at, and I definitely think something that I know that a lot of people are amazed by, is how you have engaged both the citizen and the businesses as well in Sonderborg to be part of this. What is kind of the secret sauce behind that? Because in the end of the day, that doesn't depend on the temperature or the climate in the location where you are, but that's more on how you can engage people to be part of this. What been the nudge?
This was a project that started already in 2007 with some very visionary people that put out the target several decades out to be carbon neutral in 2029. And then they have started to groom the idea. I think that would be a lot easier today. And I would say it's a combination of we have in the city, we have the capabilities. We have a university, we have the capabilities that goes with electrical, mechanical, you can say competences, which is really what you need to make this happen. So there are many small companies that can contribute. That of course helps. So it's a growth platform for the city. But I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, to bring this down to a city level, to a sort of a level where you can relate to it, makes it people's own agenda, and they have probably a higher tendency to engage and contribute and support if they can see that it's so close, so it matters. It's nearby.
Yeah. And that takes me a little bit to our other speaker that are solving parts of this problem as well. Ramir, sorry again by that, but I think one of the things that you said in your presentation, that gamification has been a huge part of actually engaging the consumers, which in the end of the day, now we are sitting here mainly talking cities and B2B and so on, but I guess in the end of the day, the consumers' interests will replicate into the industry as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how their behavior is when it comes to this green transformation, and have you been able in your, I know you have not been doing this for decades, but in the time you've been doing it, can you tell us a little bit about the development of their behaviors and what is their motivation in the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, there's what we've found in terms of consumers' behaviors, and taking into account that we're a very young endeavor, we've seen a lot of interest from consumers in terms of improving the way they act and their sustainability, or their sustainability profile, or the carbon footprint of their households. But there's a lack of structured education or a main source where they can get their knowledge from. So there's this interest in finding information that they cannot find from one source, or that they sometimes don't see as very science backed or trustful information. So bringing that into an app, into a technology app, it's helping them a lot. And then there was this eagerness to learn, but the lack of resources. So that helped us a lot in engaging with consumers. And I mean, fragmenting the education in small gamified bits has also helped a lot, because eventually when you app consumption is the attention span when you are looking at your phone is very short. So you really need to cut the information in small pieces and make it very easy to digest, because at the end people are very used to change between apps and moving their thumb up and down, and if you don't make it engagement, it's not gonna work. So I think that those two elements, having structured and science-backed and trustful information, helps a lot. And making it digestible for consumers in small bits that are gamified, it's also another key component. And it's resonating among consumers, but also there's a broad range of institutions that are asking us for collaboration, like municipalities to help us. They want us to collaborate with them in their social household schemes, and even electricity brokers and so on. So there's a lot of interest, not only from consumers, but also from the B2B side.
And do you feel that when you look throughout your target group, can you see that there is a specific target group that really are interested in this, or is it across all ages and cultures and so on?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, our app is mostly geared, or the product goes to people who are either household owners or that pay for the rent, because I mean, younger consumers we are seeing an improvement in the way they are being educated, and there's a lot more going on there. But there's a generation from like late 20s and beyond, where they haven't received any structured information, and they even don't know how to recycle properly. So that, combined with the integration of the smart home devices, that's where our niche is.
Thanks so much. Education and drones, how do they work together, Marek? When we had a conversation before this panel, you said that when people ask you who your competition is, you say it's lack of knowledge, it's lack of education within this. Can you tell us a little bit about what your challenges are when it comes to taking such a new technology and innovation to the market?
Yeah, I mean, it still stands. I think there's two things. It's regulation on one end, of course, but this is developing. It's just taking time, and as we all see, every project starts in some smaller regional area. Like, so you have these hubs, and then you have another hub maybe close by, and you can start connecting it up. And this is how it works also with drones and unmanned vehicles. I think it has to find itself a good location to start from, and then grow from there and go through those use cases and start building it. And this also helps with awareness, because and of course it needs a lot of synergy as well. Like, let's just say, finding methane leaks. If the user on the other end that's causing them is not interested about this topic, then you don't have any business there, right? Then you can't help. And on the European level as well, I think it's the climate neutrality. Actually, we've been talking about it for ages, but there's not been any action for ages. We missed every single target, and I think maybe the critical mass is only now coming there. And now also, as the last IPCC report that I mentioned, but it's going to go more expensive to not do things than to do those, even if it costs. Like, nothing has ever been profitable from day one. But I think finding those synergies is important, and also increasing that awareness, showing how different things can act together to work towards the common goals, right? Climate neutrality or climate mitigation, whatever it takes to get there. And I think in the end, you just have to go through all of those different stakeholders, find out what works, how it works. Again, show, not tell. And I think in the end, it's almost like a train. It takes a lot of energy to get moving. But once you have this inertia going, this critical mass, then I think the industry synergy will help itself along. And you don't have to go out anymore, knocking on doors and saying like, oh, we could be doing this and it could be doing that. But then you already have people approaching you and working together for these common goals. And I think we're just getting there now.
Interesting.
Thanks.
When it comes to actually moving this green transformation from your side, like, where do you think it has to come from? Like, does it has to come from the consumers asking for it? Of course, ideally, it has to come from all of them. Is it the consumers? Is it the industry? Or is it actually the regulatory? Like, that has to. Who do you think has the biggest power to move this train faster than it is right now?
That's a good question. I think they all need to be involved, but in a different order than it has been, because the regulators always like to step in before anything happens. So pre-regulate. Like, if we had done it with the mobile phones initially when they were really big and only the rich bankers used them, right? And if then people don't like it, then the regulators kick in and say like, no, you can't use it outside. So you have to use it in some little door. Then we wouldn't have these small mobile phones that are really inconspicuous now, and we all use them. So the regulators maybe have to step back a bit, but help along and work with the industry. But also, it shouldn't be a technology push as much as it should be a consumer pull, because in the end, that's where the force is. And if, again, as the methane leak example is, if there's no pull to do these things and solve these issues, then the technology also doesn't know which way to exactly go and where to prioritize. Because there's a lot of possibilities, and if we all run around in different directions, then none of us can achieve any goals, really.
I think it was said by both Kjeld and it was said by Christopher as well that there's two main things that are really important in this game, and it is speed and it is implementation, right? It's like how can we implement and how can we implement fast? And this is a question to all the panel speakers. I would love to look a little bit ahead, like not right now, but ahead, like as we know, the main technologies to do this is already here, right? It's just to find the right use case for it. So where is the biggest obstacles when it comes to actually implementing this initiatives and technologies in the future? Where do we have to really go in and try to throw out some roadblocks that is basically lacking behind the speed of this transformation? I don't know if anyone want to start.
Let's just say two keywords maybe, and then the others can step in. Transparency and cooperation. I think that's the two main keywords we have to follow.
Can you just maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
No, it's for a lot of companies doing things, it's always like nice to put the confidential stamp on everything, right? Mm-hmm. Not share the info, what we're doing, what it ended up with, what it maybe even costed to go through this, or how this process was achieved. So I think we have to go transparent, like discuss those use cases, discuss the successes and also the failures, because that's lessons learned for the others. And this leads to the cooperation angle. Like, let's start communicating with each other. Again, these little hubs that we have, as the previous speakers also all showed, and didn't just talk about. Let's start connecting these hubs up and create those synergies and share and communicate and be transparent. I think that's from my side.
Kjeld, what do you think?
Yeah, there is an issue for society and competition law. How big a premium will you give a technology leader? Because there's no doubt about you can push the legislation harder. Back to your previous question. I'm a member of a small board for a small company we have that make sensors for CO2 emission on ships. There are no legislation there. It's probably some of the most dirty stuff in this world that's come out of the chimney of a ship. And the technology is available for measuring. So before a ship runs into harbor, you could ask for a report, but that's not. There are many other examples. But if you start to put top legislation there, and there is, then you can run into patents, and suddenly you create a monopoly. And our legislators are very sensitive of not running into that, and they also want to protect their own business. I've been in China for 5 years, and I know how much they're watching out for not making this going any faster than their own business can benefit from it. So there are more than the green agenda in play here. But I don't think, of course, you can say places where technology is not ready, but they are. Then we come back to take the simple part, the things with a 3 years payback time. Why we're not doing that? I think for many small companies who are, if we take the companies first, they are busy. And they don't get around to that kind of improvement in their business. And we know that we are talking to them, and there are so many things they need to do. So even though they can see the potential, they are not just getting around to it. They're allocating resources to it. Maybe. Of course, pushing them with the vision and so on is one thing. Legislation can probably also help in many regards. But there is probably not one silver bullet.
No. Otherwise, it probably would have been used.
Yeah.
yeah, as a small company and a very small one and a recently created one, yeah, we certainly have a lot in our plate to be taking care of regulation and so on. So I mean, we do enough with surviving and adapting to the current legal framework. And yeah, we certainly believe it's more powerful to educate consumers, and simply regulation, if anything, will follow and adapt to consumer demands.
I forgot to say before that tends to be over-proportional focus on big projects, on energy supply projects, rather than energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, that's a trivial money. Energy supply is typically the vital few, and it's much easier for legislators and also people who have to provide funding to support the vital few. But really, and that's kind of what I'm advocating, there are many low-hanging fruits in energy efficiency, and that will have a huge impact on fast implementation of the Paris Agreement. But we can also see there tend to be a hockey stick in the plans before you're looking at technologies that are really not fully developed yet. Carbon capture, Power-to-X, and then huge project, instead of turning your attention to all the many things that could do something with a much faster and of course with a much more immediate CO2 impact.
Amazing. Everyone, it's 10:30. Our time is up. I think that's some really interesting things. I took some very good notes, and also the last one. Start small. Every impact is an impact, and we should try to do that as well. Kjeld, Ramir, Marek, Christopher, thank you so much for being part of this panel today. It was really great to hear your different projects and companies and what you're doing. I'll see that we have to be out of the breakout room now. So thank you so much for participating. Thank you for listening in, everyone, and have a wonderful conference from here.
Thank you.
Good day.
Bye bye. Nice to meet you guys.
Yes. Bye.